Thank you so much for joining us. We are really excited to have you with us. Welcome to session 4 of Accessible Authors. This is a week-long event which is hosted by Children Today to celebrate disability and the power of storytelling. My name is Fiona and I'm the fundraiser with Children Today. And in this session, we are delighted to welcome Jordan, who's going to be reading from his work, I Talk Like a River. Just before we get going, I'd really like to tell you a little bit more about our charity. So our charity Children Today is super duper small. We're a team of 6 ladies, and we help children and young people who are living with disabilities across the UK, all the way up to the age of 25, to access adapted equipment, which is often unavailable from the NHS. And this includes things like trikes, powered wheelchairs, adapted buggies, and more. We are really, really thrilled to be working with our amazing authors this week to bring greater awareness to disability in storytelling. And if you or someone who you know, be it a friend, a family member, a colleague, or a fellow student who might need our help as a charity, then you can get in touch with us by email at info@childrentoday.org.uk or by telephone, and the number is there on the screen. This is a completely free event, and if you're able, we would love it if you could help us to continue to run events like this by donating as much or as little as you would like. You can do this by texting the number on the screen and the keyword authors to donate £3, or you can scan the QR code for a donation form. Jordan Scott, you are amazing. You are a multi-award winning and internationally acclaimed author and poet, and you're based in Canada. You currently teach at the UBC School of Creative Writing, and your debut book, which you're reading today, I Talk Like a River, was a New York Times Best Children's Book of 2020. And since then, it's been translated into 19 languages and received the American Library Association's Schneider Family Book Award, honouring authors for their artistic expression of disability experience. Not only that, but I Talk Like a River was nominated for the 2021 Christie Harris Illustrated Children's Literature Book Prize and the Governor General's Literary Prize for Young People's Literature. And coming up in Jordan's sort of next publications is I Stutter, I Lie, a memoir of dysfluency, power and truth. So if you're interested in learning more about Jordan, then what a fabulous way to hear more about him. So welcome, Jordan.
Oh yes, yeah. So nice to be here. Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
We're so lucky to have you with us. And I was just wondering if we could start with a few little questions for you so that our audience can get to know you a little bit better, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So obviously I've covered quite a lot of it, but can you introduce yourself to us? Where are you from? What are your interests?
Yeah, so I'm from Canada specifically. I live on Vancouver Island, on the northern part of Vancouver Island. So it's a pretty isolated place, but it's really beautiful here. And we've been here for about 6 years. So just in terms of geography, you probably know Vancouver, British Columbia. That's a major city, and I'm like, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours by driving and boat from there. And I live here with my wife and my 2 sons and a lot of cats and a dog.
Amazing. I know that a lot of our authors that we've heard from this week have absolutely loved animals. And I know that our audience always has lots of lovely questions about your
Yes.
favorite animals.
Yeah, we have we have 4 cats. So if you have any questions about the cats, I'd be always happy to answer them.
Amazing. That is quite a lot of cats. You must be very busy.
Very busy, yes.
So I think quite a lot of us will have been introduced to I Talk Like a River through Ed Sheeran's bedtime story segment on CBeebies. Um, did Ed reach out to you to ask you how you felt about him reading his book? How did you feel?
Oh, it was really amazing. It still kind of it still really brings like a smile to my face. It's pretty remarkable, I think. It was a total surprise, actually. So I have a wonderful publisher in the UK, Walker Books, um, and I think it was them who sort of got it all started, or I'm not exactly sure how it worked. All of a sudden, I was just told that this was happening, and then I was uh, on like a BBC morning show, which was really cool. So yeah, it all happened very quickly, and I'm really grateful for that moment.
Yeah, it's really impressive. And I think you did your book justice. I think it was a lovely reading. How did you feel about being on the news?
Oh, it was wonderful. I mean, it was really it is something that doesn't happen very often, if at all. And I really enjoyed the reading of the book that Sharon did as well. I thought it was really beautiful, as well as his story about uh, his own stutter as well.
Yeah, it's really powerful, isn't it, when you share an experience with someone, and particularly when you can relate to someone that you see in the pages of a storybook. So I think it's lovely. Just to move on then, Jordan, what kick-started your interest in writing? Did you always want to be a writer?
I think it started really early on in my ch childhood when I was growing up. My stutter was quite a bit stronger than it is right now. It was more difficult for me when I was younger, so I kind of turned to uh, writing so I didn't have to speak. Um, and I think that when I talk to stutterers who just happen to be writers, that's still like fairly common that they turn to writing as a way to not have to worry about stuttering, just kind of expressing yourself the way that you want to without the stutter. So that kind of drew me to writing. And then, of course, some really wonderful teachers along the way who encouraged that part of my life.
That's so lovely. It's really nice that your teachers were particularly inspirational. Are there any teachers that you remember particularly fondly, and what was it that you loved about them?
Yeah, so some of my teachers, so there's one teacher, grade 5, well, grade 4 and grade 5. So Miss Krillman and Mr. Galliford, um, they, I think they understood um, stuttering perhaps more so than other teachers, and they would allow me to sometimes not have to talk or present, which was really kind of grueling for me in a lot of ways, and very stressful. So they kind of found other ways for me to share in class through writing or through stories that I could just take some time out and write and be kind of quiet and alone. But then also they were really great at talking to other students about stuttering as well. So yeah, I'll always remember them for that.
That's really special, and it's so lovely that you still remember them even to this day. And teachers can have a
I do.
tremendous impact on us, even when we are grown-ups.
Hmm.
Um, so can you sort of tell us about the first book that you ever wrote? It could be one that you've published, or it could be a special story that you wrote as a child. Can you remember the first book or story that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I think I mean, the first book that I wrote was a book of poetry, but the first poem that I ever wrote was in grade 6, and my mother really helped me write that poem. And she's a wonderful poet, so there was always, like, poetry books all around the house. So she helped me to write that particular poem, and I remember it was about it was about stuttering, and it was, really interestingly, like, kind of similar to I talked like a river, where there was just a character in the poem trying to understand the way that they speak by being out in nature, which is something I love to do.
Amazing. Yeah, you're very lucky in Canada because there's lots and lots of beautiful nature all around you as well. Um, so today you're going to be reading from I Talk Like a River. What inspired you in particular to write this book? Was it the poem that kind of led you into it?
I think it was it was mostly. So I had written a whole kind of, poetry book about stuttering, and in that book, I kind of wanted to give an introduction to why I was interested in talking about stuttering, and then I remembered that the kind of poem I wrote as a kid, and I remembered those kind of moments that I spent with my dad. So I wanted to try to tell that story in a different genre, because mm, I think for me, and kind of the background of wanting to write about stuttering, it was also when I was a kid growing up, there weren't a lot of stories at all about stuttering. The only real um, kind of representations are people that I saw who stuttered on TV or in books. It was all very negative. Um, and as a kid, that's very hard, because then you feel like really alone, right? Um, so for me, I kind of hope that when I wrote this, when I when I tried to write it in a picture book, that it would reach kind of younger people, and strangely, like my younger self as well, who I had in my head while I was writing.
That's so lovely. And again, this is the whole aim behind Accessible Authors, is to highlight positive representation. And thank
Hmm.
you so much for highlighting, stuttering in such a positive and lovely way, so that hopefully people aren't going to feel as alone as they grow up. Um,
Hmm.
so your book is really, really beautifully illustrated by Sydney Smith. How did you meet Sydney? How did you discuss creating the images for I Talk Like a River?
Yeah, so um, usually how that happens is once your book gets accepted for publication, the editor chooses who does the artwork. So in my case, we have a really great editor at Holiday House Books. His name is Neil Porter, and he chose Sydney. So it was really his vision to have Sydney do the illustrations for this book. Um, and Sydney and I did not actually, we did not talk at all during the time that he was doing the artwork for the book. So the only time that we talked was uh, like just briefly uh, in a coffee shop in Toronto before he started work on it. And that was it. So so what you see in the book is just Sydney's understanding of the story without any influence from me at all, which is quite wonderful because um, I think he really understands stuttering. As a person who doesn't stutter, he really understands um, how it feels. And I just really respect that. I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's lovely. It's sort of joining you together, two very different art forms to promote the same beautiful idea. We've got a
Yes,
couple of questions coming in. I'm sure you're not surprised, but these questions are about your cats. So the
great.
first question is, what color are your cats? And secondly, are they friendly?
Okay, so let me see. It's early in the morning here, so I'm trying to think of my cats now. One cat is orange, the other one's gray and white. The other one's like a tabby, just kind of like a mix of all different colors. And then the other one is black and white. They are all very friendly, except for the older one. He's a little bit grumpy. He's really choosy on who he loves. Um, and you're only allowed to pet him on the head. That's it. He doesn't like to be touched anywhere else. The other cats are really super friendly. Our smallest cat, her name is a Kit Kat. She's really cute, and she has all these relationships with other homes in the neighborhood. Like she'll go to their house and like spend the night or hang out with their kids and come home in a couple days. It's really amazing. I've never had a cat like that. She just goes out and has all these other memories and experiences with all these other people in our neighborhood. Everybody knows Kit Kat. That's just to say, yeah.
Maybe that's inspiration for another story, is the adventures of Kit Kat.
Yeah, she actually loves our dog. And she loves a lot of dogs. She tries to snuggle with dogs all the time. It's very adorable and very unusual. She's a very unusual cat.
Well, they sound super duper friendly.
Yes,
Um,
they are.
sometimes a bit too friendly, perhaps.
Yeah, that's right.
So when you're starting writing a book, where do you begin? Do you have a favorite place that you like to write?
I, I I generally all my books sort of start in my head, and then I know this sounds strange, but I kind of write them in my head a lot before I put them down onto paper. Kind of like think about them a lot when I'm walking or hiking or whatever, and then yeah, I let them kind of swim around in my head for a long time, and then I'll sit down to write them, and that takes a while. I usually try to write them down and then return to them and change them, return to them and change them. So it's a long process, but that's the way that I work.
I'm sure that we've got a lot of potential young authors in our audience. If you could
Right.
give them one bit of advice to sort of take their first steps on a journey to becoming an author, what advice would you give them?
So two bits of advice. Probably the first one would be to read a lot, to read as much as you can. And then while you're reading, pay attention to the way that book is written. So if you read something and you feel sad or you cry or you feel angry, go back to that page or that poem and have a look at it in a different way. Like try to look at it and ask yourself, so how did the author make me feel that way? So then you start to look at writing in a different way. You start to sort of think about how it makes you feel a certain way, the way that the author is using words or like telling their story, the way characters talk. So you begin to pay attention to that. And that's very powerful because even as an adult, I do that all the time because that's the way that you learn, right? It's like if you're a painter or you want to be a musician, you have to listen to other great musicians and figure out how they're doing it and maybe copy them for a while. That's what I used to do. Copy their style, try to do the same, other thing that they do. And there's nothing wrong with that because that's just how you learn. And that's the way that I did and still do. So that, reading a lot and paying attention to it. And then I keep a journal as well, just kind of writing down any random ideas, anything at all. Don't stop yourself, just write whatever, because you never know, right? Just to get those ideas out of your head and then have a look at them afterwards and decide which ones you want to spend time on.
I think that's fantastic advice. I'm always scribbling on little bits of paper everywhere, so I think that's my
Yeah, that's right.
version of a journal.
Absolutely.
Jordan, did you have a particular favorite book when you were growing up, when you were small?
Uh, yeah, I would say my favorite. I sort of had two books when I was really young. I really enjoyed. There's this book called Alligator Alligator Pie by Dennis Lee, and it's like a book of children's poetry, but it's very odd and really, it's like nonsense, like almost like a Lewis Carroll type of poetry. I really loved that, and then I guess when I was maybe 12, around 12, 11, 12, I really enjoyed this series. It's like a children's novel called or series, and it's called My Side of the Mountain. It is the first book in that series, and it's about a boy who is who lives in New York City and decides he doesn't want to be in the city anymore. So he runs away into the wilderness and he learns how to live on his own in the forest. Um, and it is incredible. He figures out how to train a hawk, and that hawk kind of hunts for him and gathers food for him. It's like my favorite book. I really, really enjoy it.
It sounds amazing, and definitely one that I'm sure our audience would love to read as well.
Hmm.
Jordan, if you are ready, would you like to read a little bit of I Talk Like a River for us?
Hmm. Of course. All right. So, would you like me to read the whole thing, Fiona? Do we have time for that, or just a little bit?
Yes, I think we've got plenty of time.
Okay, great. All right. So, I'm going to be reading this way. So I'll just kind of hold up the pages as we go. So this is the front cover here by Sydney Smith, which I think is really beautiful. It's so interesting with this book because in the book, in the story, I don't talk about swimming at all or going in the water. That was all just Sydney who interpreted the story in that way, which is interesting because I am a cold water swimmer. I was actually inspired to swim in the cold water by, I know there's a lot of people in the UK who do that. So anyway, this is really meaningful to me that he had the child in the book just actually put his whole body into the river. It's really lovely. So I'll start. So this is the first page there. I wake up each morning with the sounds of words all around me. For the pine tree outside my bedroom window. For the crow in its branches. For the moon hiding in the morning sky. I wake up each morning with the sounds of words all around me, and I can't say them all. The puff in pine tree grows roots inside my mouth and tangles my tongue. The k is a crow that sticks in the back of my throat. The in moon, you dust my lips with a magic that makes me only mumble. I wake up in the morning with these word sounds stuck in my mouth. I stay quiet as a stone. I eat my porridge without a peep. I get ready for the day without a word. At school, I hide in the back of class. I hope I don't have to talk. When the teacher asks me a question, all my classmates turn and look. They don't see a pine tree sticking out from my lips instead of a tongue. They don't hear a crow caw from inside my throat. They don't hide their eyes from the moon light that shines from my open mouth. All they hear is how I don't talk like them. All they see is how strange my face looks, and that I can't hide how scared I am. My mouth just isn't working. It's full with words of the morning. Yeah, mornings are always hard, but this one's especially tough. I'm more stuck than ever. My teacher says we all have to talk about our favorite place in the world. Today is my turn, but my mouth just isn't working, and I want to go home. My dad picks me up from school. It's just a bad speech day, he says. Let's let's go somewhere quiet. My dad takes me to the river. We walk along the shore, looking for colorful rocks and water bugs. It feels good to be quiet and alone with my dad, but I can't stop thinking about my bad speech day. All those eyes watching my lips twist and twirl, all those mouths giggling and laughing. As I feel a storm in my belly, my eyes fill with rain. Uh, uh, my dad sees I am sad and pulls me close. He points to the river and says, "See how that water moves? That's how you speak." I look at the water, bubbling, whirling, churning, and crashing. This is my favorite part of the book. See, that's okay, I'm going to try to open it. My dad says I talk like a river. That's what I like to remember to help stop myself from crying. I talk like a river, or from not wanting to speak at all. I talk like a river. When the words around me are hard to say, I think of the proud river, bubbling, churning, whirling, and crashing. And I also think of the calm river beyond the rapids, where the water is smooth and glistening. This is how my mouth moves. This is how I speak. Even the river stutters like I do. I wake up in the morning with the sounds of words all around me. I go to school and tell the class about my favorite place in the world. I talk about the river, and I talk like a river. All right. Well, thanks a lot, everyone. I appreciate you listening.
Thank you so much. That was a really beautiful reading, Jordan. And from there, I think we've got a couple of questions. if that's all right
Of
with you.
course, of course.
So we have a question which is, do you like being an author?
Yeah, I really enjoy being being a writer. Yeah, I mean it's so important to me, and I really enjoy sharing stories with people.
And the second question is, how many books have you written?
So I've written I have 5 books of poetry for adults, and I've written so 3 children's books that are published. So 3 picture books that have already, been out into the world. And then I have one, two, three. I have 3 more picture books that are on their way. That the artwork is started for those books.
Amazing. One of the questions is, do you have children? Now you've mentioned your children. I think our audience might like to hear a little bit more. Do they inspire you as a writer?
Yeah, I have 2 sons, Sasha and Rowan. They're 11 and 9 years old. Um, yeah, they inspire me a lot in terms of kind of, thinking of stories, listening to the way that they tell stories, talking with them about some of my ideas. Sometimes they tell me no, they don't like that idea. Sometimes they take out a word or a sort of scene in a book that they don't like that I'm working on. So it's really helpful.
It sounds like they give you quite good advice. They're quite useful to have
Yes, they
around.
do. They are.
Um, your main character in I Talk Like a River, they sound like they have quite a tough time at school. And sometimes they don't even like to go to school. So do you have any advice for people who might be finding school a little bit tough?
Yeah, I mean that's a hard question. I think that everybody has to kind of find their own way, right? I think that I could just say from my own personal experience, I had a really wonderful relationship with my dad. So sometimes he would just kind of let me, like in the book, he would let me stay at home with him, or we would go on a hike for half the day, or just go somewhere to be quiet and alone, that type of thing. So sometimes that just really helped me just to take a just to take a break. Um, but I think the other thing is like, mm, I mean, I was the only person that stuttered in my school, and um, I had really good friends, and that kind of meant the world to me. So, like, I had a group of friends who never really talked about my my stuttering at all in a good way, right? Like it just didn't matter to them, and yeah, they always sort of stuck up for me and accepted me. And I think that that's one way to make people's lives around you feel better and more comfortable, because like I never told them how much they how like I never told them how much they kind of meant to me at that age. Um, but yeah, if someone in your class is struggling and you're a friend to them, that just means the world. That you really have the power to change their whole life.
I completely agree. I think even a
Mhm.
smile at someone who you know is having a hard day, or a kind word, can make a tremendous difference and help people feel accepted. I think that's a
Yeah.
really beautiful piece of advice. And I know lots of people that didn't like going to school initially, but you know, looking back, actually, they've quite enjoyed it. Um,
Yes.
One of the assignments that was set to your character was to write about their, or excuse me, to speak about their favorite place. Do you yourself have a favorite place where you like to go?
Yeah, it's just down the road from our house here. It's a beach in a little cove, um, and that's my favorite place to go. It's really quiet. Not a lot of people who go down there. Um, it's a beautiful spot just to go down and swim or walk on the beach. There's lots of eagles down there and herons, and it's a really beautiful spot. I'd say that's my favorite place.
It sounds really lovely. I
It is,
myself
yeah.
like to get out in the nature. Absolutely brilliant. I'm just going to check if we've got any further questions from our audience. I think I'm a bit technologically slow on my end. Um, I was also going to ask you, what's your favorite genre to read? Because you're a poet, do you prefer to read poetry, or do you prefer to read fiction or non-fiction?
I think it's a big mix. I really enjoy reading poetry, but I really enjoy like nonfiction as well. Um, I read with my sons a lot, so I really enjoy reading, you know, picture books and kind of middle grade novels and stuff like this. So yeah, I kind of read all over the place, which is how I've always done. I'll just read all sorts of different genres, but I think poetry is still my favorite genre to read.
I think so too. I agree. It's very varied, isn't it? You don't know what you're going to get when you open up a book of poetry.
Absolutely.
So your current role at the moment, you're teaching in many ways. How do you find teaching, and why did you choose to go into teaching?
Yeah, oh, I teach. So I teach at two places. I teach at UBC Creative Writing in Vancouver here, and then I also teach at another school called Fraser International College, where I teach students from all over the world. I really love teaching. It's sometimes hard choosing a job where I have to speak all the time. I sometimes get really tired of that just because it's like for stutterers that like you really feel tired sometimes after talking all day, but you know, my students are wonderful and really accepting. Yeah, and I love talking about yeah, literature and books, so that's that's why I chose teaching.
Amazing. It's a wonderful career. Um, and last but not least, I think sometimes it's difficult for people who want to help people who are having trouble communicating, or who have a stutter. Do you have any advice for someone in terms of how they can help, or the best way to talk about it?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I'll just, you know, maybe say what works for me. Um, so I think when I talk to people who don't stutter, I really like when those people don't interrupt me and don't try to finish my sentences. Lots of people do that because they think they're being helpful. I don't think it comes from a bad place, but the stutterers that I know and myself included, we We don't like that. When you're trying to say something and then somebody just kind of finishes what they think you're trying to say. So I think that's one way of doing it, is just to let people speak and listen and be patient.
I think that's really fabulous advice. I think it's fabulous advice for life, isn't it? Is
Yeah,
just
sure it is.
listening. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth.
That's right.
Well, I'm sure that everybody can agree this has been so enlightening, and you've been so open and honest with us, and we've really, really appreciated the time that you've set aside to read such a beautiful story and to share some really excellent advice for our young people as well. I think it's been a really beautiful session. So thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
Have you got any children's books that are coming out that you'd like to mention to our audience?
Yeah, so just in January, my book, it's called Angela's Glacier, and that just came out just a few months ago. And that's about a young girl's relationship with a glacier in um, uh, in Iceland, and it's kind of based off my friend Angela, who lives there, and her sort of experiences and her connections to the glaciers there.
And it's illustrated by Sydney Smith again, isn't it?
No, it's another person. That's Diana Sidhu, and yeah, but so that's the one that's out just recently. But Sydney Smith did another book with me called My Bubba's Garden, and that one's also out in the world as well.
They are really, really beautiful, beautiful stories. If you get the chance, please do get your hands on them. Just to close off, really briefly, I'm going to have a little technological wobble. Sorry, Jordan.
That's okay.
It wouldn't be an online meeting without a few technological wobbles. If you enjoyed this session, we know that a few of you are returning to us again, then please do give us a little shout out on social media. You can get us on Facebook, Insta, and on Twitter. And if you'd like to mention in particular what you enjoyed about Jordan's session and how lovely it was to meet Jordan, then please make sure that you mention that as well. You can get us on Facebook at Children Today UK Charity, Instagram at Children Today Charity, and Twitter at Children Today. And if you can tag us so we can find your posts really easily using the hashtag accessible authors, that would be fantastic. On behalf of all of us at Children Today, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Jordan. We really, really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great day.